All right, hello, welcome. You're listening to another episode of the motherfucking podcast, Book Club with Kate and Kelly. This is a podcast that's pretty up in the air right now with what it covers, but you know what it usually is. We cover health and wealth and wellness and peace, and but that's changing. Every day is a different day, and I'm glad you're here because you're still here. You're still gonna grab some juicy content, right? Why else would you come to this podcast if not for some juicy content? I'm actually really excited to talk about today's episode, today's content. But first, I gotta point you to my links. I gotta point you to my blog, cadeandkellysblog.wordpress.com, to get links to all of my socials where you have some old videos of me talking about self-improvement stuff. And I have a self-improvement worksheet on there and some other goodies, all outdated, but some goodies nonetheless. So go to the blog, cadeandkellysblog.wordpress.com, to get all of that extra material. And I'm sorry it took me so long to get started for anyone who's live. It was I can't get my stream to Facebook, and I think it's because I reset my password because I had some guy. I had like multiple logins across the United States, and so I reset my password. I got hacked. I lost $500. They used my account and bought $500 worth of shit on Facebook Marketplace. It's been a nightmare. But now my account is like super locked down, and I can't connect my Streamlabs to Facebook anymore. And I think it's because I have two-factor authentication on, and because now when I try to connect it prompts me to log in through the or to do the two-factor thing. And when I do, Streamlabs will restart. Or at least the connection part of Streamlabs will restart. So I spent like 30 minutes trying to disengage the two-factor authentication, and I can't get it. Facebook is so fucking annoying. I don't even like Facebook. I don't use it, and I don't like it. But I have the Cadence podcast on Facebook that I have streamed to every week for like 2.5 years. So, but I can't connect to it, and I want to spend all night trying to figure it out. So we're starting this off kind of livid, kind of pissed, but it is what it is. No Facebook, sorry, but you can still catch us on Twitch and YouTube. That's where we're at, and we got links to those lives on the blog. The blog, it's the one-stop shop for all things this podcast. So, anyway, it's Wednesday. It's January 3rd. It's 7 p.m. It's a very unusual time to record for us. But you know how it goes. We had Christmas. We had New Year's. Or if you celebrated those other holidays, Kwanzaa, whatever. Beer. Oh, yeah. Yeah, beer bar. Shout out to the local Family Biz beer bar in downtown Salt Lake. Go check it out. You know, naturally. Bar X, beer bar, eating establishment in Park City. Yeah. But, yeah, I hope your holidays were pleasant. Mine were pleasant. Our plans extended into last night. So I was going to try to record yesterday, but my family and I went and saw the Boys in the Boat movie, which was okay. It was okay. It was, as exciting as a rowing movie can get, I think. But it's, what it is pretty remarkable. How some Washington College rowing team out of nowhere won the Olympic gold medal. And that's a spoiler alert, but it's also history. So if you don't know that, then pick up a fucking history book or read something on Twitter every now and then. It was pretty good. The main character was good. Which was the main character, the boy in the boat, or was the main character the coach? And I think it was actually all about the coach all along, even though most of the story followed the boy. The beginning of the movie followed the boy, and then the end of the movie followed the coach. So it was an okay movie. But you know what? My mom sent me this podcast series of about Hitler, and I have been putting it off. And then after last night, I thought, okay, I think it's time. I listened to this and figure out who the Führer is. And I listened to it all day during work. It's like a 20-hour series. And I got through like 4 hours of it today-ish. And it's really, really good. I got it. Let me shout it out. Let me pull it up. Because it's really good. Let's see. Early years. Okay. So it's called Adolf Hitler, Rise and Downfall by Noiser. Noiser. And the commentator, this is not what this episode is going to be about, but I have to shout it out because it's really good. It doesn't give... Oh, yeah, narrated by Paul McGann, with contribution from expert historians. Yeah, it's really good. Sorry, but it's really good. So, Hitler, they showed a little clip of Hitler at the 1936 Olympics. Is that what it was? When they were in Germany? And that's where they won the gold medal. And I saw the little clip of him, and I'm like, yeah, let's go listen to it. So, really fascinating, man. And I guess I'll just say this really quick because I also recently listened to a podcast between Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson on Peterson's podcast. I think it's their most recent conversation, and that was okay as well. I really like Sam Harris. I vibe with his philosophy far more than I do with Peterson. But I think Peterson did a good job. He did a pretty good job at letting Harris as a guest do a lot of speaking, and Harris kind of they start talking about free will a little bit, and they use Hitler and Stalin as examples of why free will, well, not they, but Harris uses those people as examples of why there's a problem around free will. And listening to the first several hours of this Hitler podcast, it's been very eye-opening to me. The guy Adolf was kind of had a shitty childhood. Born in Austria, and never knew his biological father. And I guess there's a rumor that his dad was a Jew, but I think it's just a rumor. I think it's just a myth. But never knew his biological father. Resented his stepfather, who beat him, and then his stepfather died when Adolf was 14. His mom died when he was 18, I believe. Had no relationship with his siblings. And all Adolf wanted was to be an artist. He did... What kind of painting did he do? Like watercolor? He was like a watercolor painter. And tried for years to be a painter. And before his anti-Semitism set in, he tried twice to be admitted to some art school in Vienna and was rejected twice. And I was thinking how differently things may have turned out for everybody if he had been accepted to one of those art schools. He still ended up fighting in World War I, again, which I didn't know about. I didn't know that, but he didn't really. This episode's not a history lesson about Hitler. But what I'm saying is, okay, yeah, Harris makes a very interesting point that we know that Hitler committed all of these atrocities. So would it be moral for someone to go back in time, if we could, and kill a baby Hitler? But the conundrum is, Hitler at this point, or as a baby, is an innocent person. How much of what Hitler is guilty of is due to his circumstances or by his nature, right? Nature versus nurture. It's like a trolley. It's like a grand trolley problem. Would you kill one person who's innocent to save millions of people who are innocent? And it's a grand trolley problem. And I think I don't know. I don't know. I don't think there's a clear answer. Because Hitler only becomes guilty when he starts becoming anti-Semitic, and but if you knew the future, if you knew what kind of atrocities he would commit, would it be a moral decision to kill an innocent Hitler? Interesting question, and actually that's a good little segue into what the book that we're going to start covering here. It's called The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt. Why good people are divided by politics and religion. And this is not the first time we've covered this. This is the first time that I've sat down to read the text, because the first time through was through the audiobook, and you know how I feel about the audiobooks. You get like 20% of the meat of the book than when you sit down to read. And sitting down to read this has been so awesome. See, I want to try to can I just like hide my camera from me? If I just click that, I bet it hides it from everybody. Yeah, we don't want to do that. I want to keep the stream chat up, but that's okay. That's all right. Just leave it. All right, let me tell you about Jonathan Haidt. Jonathan Haidt is the Thomas Cooley Professor of Ethical Leadership at New York University's Stern School of Business. Except I believe I read this morning on Reddit that he's not that anymore. He resigned over some ethical dilemma. He obtained his PhD in social psychology from the University of Pennsylvania in 1992 and then taught at the University of Virginia until 2011. He is the author of The Happiness Hypothesis, Finding Modern Truth in Ancient Wisdom, and the co-editor of Flourishing, Positive Psychology and the Life Well Lived. He lives in New York City. This book was published in 2012, I believe. I'm going to double check. Too many pages at the beginning. 2012. First vintage book edition. Oh, I got the first vintage book edition. So I loved this book the first time around, and it's fun to reread it because so much of it is familiar. But when was it that we covered this the first time? Because I bet it was a while ago. Let's see if it just pops up. If I see it, just scrolling through my episodes. Scrolling. August 22. Righteous Mind, July 18th, 2022. So yeah, it's been a year and a half. Welcome to 2024, man. Holy crap. Isn't that something? Glad to be here, though. We're all lucky to be here. If you're listening to this, you're a lucky individual like myself, like I am. Most likely. Okay, let's jump into this. So, interesting moral dilemma about killing a baby Hitler. At least I think it's interesting. That episode with Harris and Peterson is probably worth listening to as well. Okay, this book, The Righteous Mind, is broken into 3 parts, and I've gotten through the first part. Oh, is that a sound for a new follower? Yeah, but I can't read the names. Sorry. The cursive is illegible or not legible, whatever. So, but thanks for joining. Thanks for joining this crew, the book club crew. Welcome to book club. The podcast between Peterson and Harris is probably worth listening to. I believe it was on Peterson's podcast, one of the most recent episodes. But we're gonna carry that morality dilemma into this conversation. I'll probably break this up into 3 parts. I've read the first part of this book so far, and I've got a lot of material to cover, and I've got 40 minutes. So I'm gonna get right to it. Okay, and this is how we're doing it nowadays. I'm gonna set this up, and I'm gonna get some water because we don't do coffee in the evening. It used to be coffee. Okay, he says in the introduction, this book is about why it's so hard to get us whoa. This book is why it's so hard for us to get along. I'm going to make the case that morality is the extraordinary human capacity that made civilization possible. I want to show you that an obsession with righteousness is the normal human condition. He says later on, the take-home message of the book is ancient. It is the realization that we are all self-righteous hypocrites. And then he quotes Matthew 7, 3 through 5, which I believe is about casting a... Oh, I'm going to actually move this over here. Matthew 7, 3 through 5. Pretty sure that's the take the mote out of your own eye before you judge your brother or something like that. Matthew 7, 3 through 5. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? I don't like sawdust and plank from the NIV. Ooh, yeah. Sorry, but I'm going to KJV. And why beholdest thou the mote that is in thy brother's eye, but considerest not the beam that is in thine own eye? Or how wilt thou say to thy brother, let me pull out the mote out of thine eye, and behold, the beam is in thine own eye? Thou hypocrite, first cast out the beam out of thine own eye, and then shalt thou see clearly to cast out the mote out of thy brother's eye. We're all self-righteous hypocrites, according to Jesus, first and foremost, and then to psychologists and psychology, like Jonathan Haidt. We judge so easily. We're so quick to judge, but we rarely consider our own situation. Jonathan piggybacks off of this and off of a quote from Buddha, which comes, I believe, at the beginning of chapter 2. We'll get to it, but that's the point here. The introduction, where we are righteous by nature. We have an obsession with righteousness, as he says. We're all self-righteous hypocrites. And then he says towards the end of the introduction, if we want to understand ourselves, our divisions, our limits, and our potentials, we need to step back, drop the moralism, and apply some moral psychology and analyze the game that we're all playing. And that's what we're doing here. And like the subtitle says, I don't know that I actually read it. The subtitle of the book is called Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion. I remember finding this early on, being fascinated with the idea, because I've learned a lot since. But what is still fascinating to me is just like the general idea of why people behave the way we do, why we're so judgmental and can be self-righteous, but why some people are more altruistic and kind and selfless than others. Where does this come from? And why are politics and religion so divisive, especially when something like religion proclaims to be unifying and peaceful? Why is it so divisive and the cause of so much pain and suffering? And it has to do with the people. The people are the ones that are fucked up in almost all instances. And talking about Hitler, I was talking about communism and socialism with my family yesterday, and I was trying to explain that principally, I think I'm a communist. I think that there's no reason that any human should suffer, and we should all. Okay, I don't see a reason why there should be multimillionaires or billionaires. And I see the incentive. I see why, like the capitalist argument for for capitalism is to become wealthy and to kind of become better than everyone else, to be of higher status. And I gotta open this back up. So it incentivizes people to invent and to create and to innovate. So this is an argument for capitalism, and because of it and because of other reasons, not purely capitalism, but for a lot of other reasons, we've created a lot of awesome shit. Like I've said it so many times, but this ability for me to talk into some device that transmits sound through the air and into your ears through your phone speaker or TV speaker or headphones, and right now in just about real time, is a phenomenal invention. Let alone the inventions that we have from medicine. So we've created a lot of amazing shit. And a lot of people do it for the wrong reasons. They create amazing things to become wealthy and famous and powerful and whatever. So is there a trade-off with inventing and innovation? I'm getting too off the rails, but I don't think there should be multimillionaires or especially billionaires. Principally, I think I'm a communist because I say that very lightly, very loosely. But I don't think that anybody should suffer. I think people should have everybody should have access to clean water and food and shelter and clothing and security and education and health care, and the internet and phones and to purposeful things like work and hobbies, and everyone should just have access to everything. Not everyone should have access to like a fucking yacht or anything. But I don't know. This is kind of it's tricky ground. I don't know how to bring that kind of idea into fruition. This is what I was trying to explain. And this is why everyone or a lot of my capitalist friends and family and everyone on the internet suggests that it's just communism is an impossible thing to bring to fruition, or even like moderate socialism. I think most people don't want other people to suffer. I think there are some racists and bigots out there, and selfish people only interested in the well-being of their own family and kin and whatever and community. But I think at least in the Western world, most people want most people to be well off. But how we do that is always the problem, and that's why I think politics is so divisive. Is most people in politics want the best for everybody, especially themselves and their families. But it's not like one side of the political spectrum wants another group of people to suffer. Like they want to thrive at the expense of other people. I really don't think most people are like that. I think there are some people, and I think that usually the people that are that way are the loudest. But I don't know. I'm not convinced that most people are bad or immoral. So that's why I'm fascinated with this book, and that's why I'm really excited to get into part 1 of this book, so we can explore why good people are divided by politics and religion. Part 1: intuitions come first, strategic reasoning second. And truthfully, I've reread like each paragraph as I read it 2 or 3 times, because I think Jonathan writes really well, really, really well. And he uses a ton of metaphors and analogies to help everything make sense for lay people like me, for idiots like myself. I think he does a really good job of it. And, but when a metaphor is new, it's hard to grasp right away. So I actually think if you're interested in this, first and foremost, you should read the book, listen to the audiobook, whatever. But if you're not going to, and you want to do this for free, you should listen to what I'm trying to say a couple of times so that it resonates. Intuitions come first, strategic reasoning second. Chapter 1, where does morality come from? The first point is in understanding our righteous minds. He says morality differs around the world, even within our societies. That's the first point. The second point is where do these moralities come from? He says, I think I want to pull this up. He says, children's understanding of morality isn't purely nature or purely nurture, but is self-constructed as kids play with other kids. Then on page 10, he says, if you want your kids to learn about the physical world, let them play with cups and water. Don't lecture them about the conservation of volume. And if you want your kids to learn about the social world, let them play with other kids and resolve disputes. Don't lecture them about the 10 Commandments. And for heaven's sakes, don't force them to obey God or their teachers or you. That will only freeze them at the conventional level. Yeah, you know how we do over here. We cherry pick most of the information after authors go through several layers of studies and exploratory conversation and then draw their conclusion. And I'm usually cherry picking their conclusions. So if you have any problems with what I'm saying or with the points that I'm drawing from the author, you should take it up with the author and read their book and try to get more context out of these points. And I'm trying to do my best to elaborate and make it make sense. So this first point, what we're getting at here is morality it varies from culture to culture, but it's where does it come from? And it generally comes from kids, people when they're kids interacting with other kids and how their decisions impact other kids. If what they do or say makes other kids feel good or bad, about harm and fairness. It's more than harm and fairness, and he kind of goes back and forth on old theories that are outdated with new theories. So I'm going to keep going. Page 12, he says, did I read all of this? Read all of the underlined. Kids can't talk like moral philosophers, but they are busy sorting out social information in a sophisticated way. They seem to grasp early on that rules that prevent harm are special, important, unalterable, and universal. And this realization, Turiel says, was the foundation of all moral development. Children construct their moral understanding on the bedrock of the absolute moral truth that harm is wrong. Morality is about treating individuals well. Okay, so that's we're moving along. Boat Patrol, you got a question? I see your hand raised in the chat. Feel free to throw it in at any time. Page 13, he starts hinting that human minds are adept at creating supernatural beings to order their societies. And it reminds me of a study that I read in my anthropology class about zombies in Haiti. We're really, really good at it's not, is it just confirmation bias? It could be something else where we're good at assigning meaning and reason to things that are meaningless and reasonless. And one of them is this zombie, it's not a dilemma, but phenomenon in Haiti, where locals were reporting people that have died were coming back to life, and anthropologists ended up discovering that these people were subjecting themselves to some witchcraft concoctions that would make them appear dead. It would stop their heart rate and put them in a coma, essentially, for several days. They'd be buried, and then they would eventually wake up and get dug out. It's pretty fast. I've loved the anthropology class. It's brought a lot of light to this topic, how we as humans, we're really good at assigning meaning and reasons to things that are meaningless and reasonless. He interviews hundreds of people, asking them to respond to what he calls harmless taboo violations, like eating your dog that got ran over, using an American flag as rags to clean the bathroom, etc. He discovers that people often felt morally dumbfounded when trying to justify their reasonings. Page 29. And these harmless taboo violations are so weird to read, but I think that's the point. Underline 29. The subjects were reasoning. They were working quite hard at reasoning, but it was not reasoning in search of truth. It was reasoning in support of their emotional reactions. Haidt had found that moral reasoning was often a servant of moral emotions. And this was a challenge to the rationalist approach that dominated moral psychology. So this is where he introduces his famous elephant and the rider analogy, but he doesn't get into it more until later. To wrap up this chapter, he concludes that where does morality come from? It's a post hoc fabrication based on gut feelings, and it's culturally learned as a child. It doesn't come primarily by reasoning or innateness, but they all play a role. Okay, chapter 2, the intuitive dog and its rational tail. And I'll say this quickly too. He kind of lays the landscape of how to understand morality through his lens, which is, I think he calls himself, I'm kind of spoiling this a little bit, but I think he calls himself an intuitionist, which is essentially that we have gut reactions to stimuli in the world, things of disgust and attraction, and then we use our minds to justify those feelings. So a story that he talks about a ton, a fake story, one of his harmless taboo violations, includes a brother and a sister having sex on vacation. And when he asks people how, in these studies, how they feel, if what they did was right or wrong, everybody expresses disgust. Everyone that he's interviewed in the Western world expresses disgust. And he elaborates, well, it was private. No one ever found out. He used a condom. She used birth control. So there's no chance of getting pregnant. It was a one-time thing. It was something that brought them closer together. Why was this right or wrong that they did? And still, everyone used. Yeah, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but everybody was responding to their initial feelings of disgust and trying to justify them, regardless of how inadequate their responses were. And usually it ended up with, I don't know, it's just wrong. It's just something we're not supposed to do. It's disgusting, because the most common excuse that he got was, this is wrong because if they got pregnant, it would lead to a deformed child. And again, he would explain, well, they're both using contraception. It was only a one-time thing. Whatever. Okay, I'm jumping ahead of myself, but he that's the essence of this part 1 of the book, and he's laying out the foundation for it in these first 2 chapters. So, whoops, didn't mean to close out. Chapter 2, the intuitive dog and its rational tail. Read the paragraph, page 36. So we have 3 models of the mind. Plato said that reason ought to be the master, even if philosophers are the only ones who can reach a high level of mastery. David Hume said that reason is and ought to be the servant of the passions. And Thomas Jefferson gave us a third option, in which reason and sentiment are and ought to be independent co-rulers, like the emperors of Rome, who divided the empire into eastern and western halves. Who was right? And in sum, we learned that David Hume was the closest in understanding human psychology, how we made our decisions between right and wrong in our brain and in our hearts, right, in our emotions. Was the brain was are our emotions servants? And they use the word passions, not emotions. Are our passions servants to our minds? Are our minds servants to our passions? Or are they co-rulers? And David Hume was right, or closest to being right, by asserting that our minds are servants to our passions. Which is a very interesting. Again, it's very interesting. His argument for this is compelling. I think that we are servants to our passions. I've said before in other episodes, like when you talk about stoicism and you talk about, it's important for you to focus only on what's in your control. That's where you find peace and happiness, is focusing on what's in your control. And you can't control your emotions. I've thought this for a long time. You can't control your emotions. You can't control your reaction or your response, your gut feeling, your gut response to external stimuli. When you hear a story about a brother and sister having sex on vacation, it for probably for everybody, but there's psychopaths out there that wouldn't, but most of us are experiencing a guttural reaction of disgust, and we have reactions like that for every event that occurs in our life, every single thing that we observe. And I think he talks about this in depth in this chapter, and I didn't make any notes of it. And then maybe I would know if I would just keep reading my notes. But you know how I do. You know how I like to do my own thing. We have micro intuitions about every single event that occurs throughout our day. Thousands of these gut reactions that we are cognitively reacting to, cognitively justifying or rejecting. And this is like the basis of this psychological model. And I don't think it's definitive, but I think that it's really compelling. He says, let's see, page 38, are morals subjective or objective? Ooh, this is a fun topic. Subjective or objective morality. I get a lot of those TikTok live guys arguing about whether morality is subjective or objective. Here's what Jonathan Haidt says. Do people believe in human rights because such rights actually exist, like mathematical truths sitting on a cosmic shelf next to the Pythagorean theorem, just waiting to be discovered by Platonic reasoners? Or do people feel revulsion and sympathy when they read accounts of torture and then invent a story about universal rights to help justify their feelings? What do you think? If you believe in a higher power, you're far more likely to believe that your reactions of to feel revulsion and sympathy when you read about accounts of torture comes from God. If you're a religious person, you'll believe that your feelings for sympathy come from God. And if you're not, like me, I will acknowledge that we experience the same things, but I would say that our the source of the sympathy and of the revulsion comes from biology. It's plain and simple. And yeah, okay, maybe God created our biology to make us feel this way. Whatever. There's no evidence for it. There's no evidence that God did that. But that's neither here nor there. Does the reaction exist in physical space or even theoretical space where it can be observed and repeatable like math, like the Pythagorean theorem, like in his example? Or are we using our post hoc rationalizations to justify or reject the feelings that we experience when shit happens, when shit hits the fan, right? And he doesn't really, yeah, he's not really taking a hard side, but I think it's pretty, to me, it's obvious that there is no objective morality. I can't, especially without granting the existence of a God. If there is a God and he bestows morality upon us, like this is, I said in my last episode that free will deserves an entire episode or series of its own, and it totally does. But briefly, I can't. Well, no, I talked about it last week. I'll talk about it in the future some more. I believe that morals are subjective. I actually don't even think morals exist. I think I'm not persuaded against relative. What's the term? Moral relativity. I'm not convinced against moral relativity, even though I find it disgusting that there are no morals in the that exist. We want people, when they do things that hurt other people, to be punished. We want that to be a wrong thing in the universe when people fuck up. Like a Hitler. When a Hitler does a Hitler thing and kills millions of Jews, we want that to be universally wrong. But without an objective morality or some kind of framework to pull from, there's nothing that exists to denote that it is objectively wrong. We all just decide that it's wrong subjectively. There's a lot of gray area, but this is why I love this conversation. It is fucking wrong. But why it's wrong is a totally different conversation, I think. Let's move on. Let me get some water. We're going to get through all of these chapters, I'm telling you. So he moves on, says, Hume's model was closest to correct in the 90s, according to Antonio Damasio's research. From Antonio Damasio, we learned when the ventromedial prefrontal cortex suffers damage, the mind feels no emotions, yet they maintain full knowledge. Of right and wrong. They still make foolish decisions in life, though. It's like the story of the guy that becomes a gambling addict out of nowhere and then comes to find out he has a brain tumor. Yeah, that's a fascinating story from another book. Can't remember exactly where, but I got to read this. Underlined. Page 41. Hume's model fits these cases best. When the master or the passions drops dead, the servant or reasoning has neither the ability nor the desire to keep the estate running. Everything goes to ruin. So it's evidence to support this model that our minds, our reason is a slave, or a servant rather, to the passions. It is our passions that are driving the ship. And according to Haidt's analogy, the model he uses is the rider and the elephant. The rider being our mind, our mental state, our cognitive ability, and the elephant being our emotions and our passions and our like subconscious and guttural reactions. We are the rider. We are reacting to how the elephant. And the reason he uses an elephant and not something like a horse is because horses are more domesticated and easier to control. And this is what he says. And the elephant is much harder to control. It's large, it's awkward, and is very smart, very, very intelligent, has a mind of its own, and makes decisions on its own. And so our passions are not blind or dumb either. Our passions, our guttural reactions, can be very wise. But it is our mind, it is the rider that is justifying the actions of the elephant. And Mark Manson uses he uses a car analogy where your mind is a passenger and it's your emotions that are driving the car. It's another good analogy. Our emotions are driving the car, and our mind is trying to talk to the emotions, trying to justify every turn and decision that the emotions make while driving the car. Our minds are not in control. It is our emotions and our passions. This is the model that Haidt is advocating for. And that makes the most sense. Reasoning is a servant to the passions. More support for Hume's claims after more harmless taboo interviews. Read the bracket on page 47. Okay, skip a couple pages. Sorry. Okay. 40. Oh, I'm on 45. Okay, yeah. Oh, this is awesome. So, here is a question and answer discussion between Haidt and an interviewee, a subject. And it is about the incest siblings. So, okay, experimenter. So what do you think about this? Was it wrong for Julie and Mark to have sex? Subject. Yeah, I think it's totally wrong to have sex. You know, because I'm pretty religious and I just think incest is wrong anyway. But I don't know. Experimenter. What's wrong with incest, would you say? Subject. The whole idea of, well, I've heard, I don't even know if it's true, but in the case, if the girl did get pregnant, the kids become deformed most of the time in cases like that. And by the way, this is, as he says, this is word for word their interaction with like chunks cut out of like awkward pauses. This is like the exact transcript. Experimenter, but they both used a condom and birth control pills. Subject. Oh, okay. Yeah, you did say that. Experimenter. So there's no way they're going to have a kid. Subject. Well, I guess the safest sex is abstinence, but I don't know. I just think that's wrong. I don't know. What did you ask me? Experimenter. Was it wrong for them to have sex? Subject. Yeah, I think it's wrong. Experimenter. And I'm trying to find out why. What you think is wrong with it. Subject. Okay. Well, let's see. Let me think about this. How old are they? Experimenter. They were college age, around 20 or so. Subject. Oh, looks disappointed. I don't know. It's just not something you're brought up to do. It's just not, well, I mean, I wasn't. I assume most people aren't. I just think that you shouldn't. I don't. I guess my reason is just that you're not brought up to do it. You don't see it. It's not I don't think it's accepted. That's pretty much it. Experimenter. This is almost over, by the way. Experimenter. You wouldn't say anything. Okay. You wouldn't say anything you're not brought up to see is wrong, would you? For example, if you're not brought up to see women working outside the home, would you say that makes it wrong for women to work? Subject. Well, oh gosh, this is hard. I really, I mean, there's just no way I could change my mind, but I just don't know how to. How to show what I'm feeling, what I feel about it. It's crazy. And then that's the end of the interview. And then he says at the end of it, afterwards, he says, the results supported Hume, not Jefferson or Plato. Most people made moral judgments quickly and emotionally. Moral reasoning was mostly just a post hoc search for reasons to justify the judgments people had already made. That was a long-winded way to say it, but I thought the interview was fascinating to read because that's kind of how, you know, like why else is incest wrong, right? Why else is it wrong? We're like biologically programmed to be repulsed by having sex with our siblings. But why, you know, if no, this is a really, really interesting aspect to morality. Because, you know, other than saying it's just wrong, it feels wrong, and I don't know what else, I don't know how else to describe it, is right, but it seems insufficient. You know what I mean? 51 to 52 is the difference between subjective preference and moral judgment. Okay. He says, quote, the roach juice and soul-selling dilemmas instantly make people see that they want to refuse, but they don't feel much conversational pressure to offer reasons. Let me say really quickly. They ran an experiment where with atheists, or not just atheists, I'm sorry, but the research was similar amongst atheists that they gave participants a contract saying, I hereby sell my soul to the interviewer for $5, but nobody would sign it, or very few people would sign it, and the numbers were just as few amongst atheists. There's something that feels weird about writing on a contract to sell your soul to somebody else. And then they did a thing with roach juice. I'm not going to get into it, but they did these like weird things with, the people that just things that make people feel weird or uncomfortable. So he says, the roach juice and soul-selling dilemmas instantly make people see that they want to refuse, but they don't feel much conversational pressure to offer reasons. Not wanting to drink roach-tainted juice isn't a moral judgment. It's a personal preference. Saying, because I don't want to, is a perfectly acceptable justification for one's subjective preferences. Yet, moral judgments are not subjective statements. They are claims that somebody did something wrong. I can't call for the community to punish you simply because I don't like what you're doing. I have to point to something outside of my own preferences, and that pointing is our moral reasoning. We do moral reasoning not to reconstruct the actual reasons why we ourselves came to a judgment. We reason to find the best possible reasons why somebody else ought to join us in our judgment. Oh, this is so powerful. Somewhere between pages 53 and 54, he reduces passions to intuitions. Okay, this is where he gets more into like being an intuitionist, suggesting we make moral judgments constantly about small occurrences too, concluding that, quote, reasoning is the servant of the intuitions. He says you can't change people's minds by simply refuting their arguments. You've got to speak to their intuitions, to their emotions. And then read this part on 56. You have to speak to their emotions. It's so powerful. Where? I don't have anything underlined on 56. How to win argument? Oh. The social intuitionist model offers an explanation of why moral and political arguments are so frustrating. Because moral reasons are the tail wagged by the intuitive dog. A dog's tail wags to communicate. You can't make a dog happy by forcibly wagging its tail. And you can't change people's minds by utterly refusing their arguments. Hume diagnosed the problem long ago. And as, this is Hume, a quote from Hume. And as reasoning is not the source whence either disputant derives his tenets, it is in vain to expect that any logic which speaks not to the affections will ever engage him to embrace sounder principles, close quote. Haidt goes on to say, if you want to change people's minds, you've got to talk to their elephants. He then goes on to, oh shit, I lost my bookmark. Oh, where was I? Dang it. I think it was right here. He goes on to talk about Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. I read that and covered that. I've read that book several times, but I've covered that on here, and I think I criticized it to be like as this manipulative book. Because it really is like, hey, you want people to like you, you have to, like, here's how you fake it till you make it. Here's how to fake it so that people like you, or to manipulate people to like you. And like one of the first examples in the book given in that from Carnegie is being at a dinner party, and the host is telling a story and quotes the Bible, and you, being a smart person, know that he's misquoting the Bible. But Carnegie says that if you want him to like you, you shouldn't say anything. You shouldn't embarrass him or critique him or correct him in front of others, lest you embarrass him and make him not like you. And I still think that that's like, it's not just manipulative. It's like, but I guess it's just a personal preference thing. Like if that person is unable to see that if they make a mistake, they should be corrected, and if they get corrected, it hurts their feelings, then they're just immature. They're sensitive and immature, I guess. And I think it's just different because if I am doing this, or if I'm talking to somebody in person and I say something wrong, or I misquote somebody or misrepresent some principle, I want to be corrected. I want to make sure that I'm speaking accurately and truthfully. I want my ideas to be presented accurately, and even in front of people. I like, it sucks. It sucks to be criticized or critiqued. It sucks to be corrected. It feels bad, but that doesn't mean it's not good. But that's why that was a critique I had of Carnegie's book. But what Haidt says here is, well, I make the note and say that he addresses Carnegie's book, how it seems manipulative, but Haidt implores that Carnegie was spot on from a moral psychologist's perspective. This is how he was spot on. So this is from Haidt's book. It's such an obvious point. The point that, I'll start a sentence earlier as he quotes Henry Ford. Henry Ford says, if there is any one secret of success, it lies in the ability to get the other person's point of view and see things from their angle as well as your own. Close quote. Now, Haidt says, following up, it's such an obvious point, yet few of us apply it in moral and political arguments because our righteous minds so readily shift into combat mode. The rider and the elephant work together smoothly to fend off attacks and lob rhetorical grenades of our own. The performance may impress our friends and show allies that we are committed members of the team, but no matter how good our logic, it's not going to change the minds of our opponents if they are in combat mode too. If you really want to change someone's mind on a moral or political matter, you'll need to see things from that person's angle as well as your own. And if you do truly see it in the other person's way, deeply and intuitively, you might even find your own mind opening in response. Empathy is the antidote to righteousness, although it's very difficult to empathize across a moral divide. Which is especially important considering what we're coming up against in this 2024 presidential race. There's so many, and I've been getting more involved in politics, and it's still so small and minuscule, my involvement, but it's more than in the past. Trying to understand why people vote for Biden or want to vote for him, want to vote for Trump, or oppose voting for either candidate, or support or oppose people like controversial figures like Robert Kennedy. And there's so much that goes into it, not just policy, but how people react to what they say and how they behave. I mean, everyone sees, everyone remembers Trump's locker room talk thing right when he got put in the president, where he said to grab him by the pussy, right? Everybody remembers that. And it was a gross representation of who our president was. But everybody has to rationalize it or reconcile it in their own way. They either attribute it, they're either justify it, or they are condemning it. But everyone is responding to their reaction to learning about how our president behaved. It behaves now and behaves in the past. I guess our former president. I know I said I was going to get through part 1 in this episode, but it's already been an hour, and I'm halfway there. So do I do 2 hours? I think I'm just going to stop and do the next part next week. Sorry. 1 hour episodes to keep you engaged, to bump up those numbers. You know what I mean? And to give me a little bit of content to talk about next week. But, you know, I have so many notes and so many comments about this topic in this conversation. I love it. I love the conversation around morality because it's so different to everybody. And it drives our decision making and our thought processes. It drives our politics. It drives our religious conversations. It drives our education, right? With all of this, the people in our universities, like the lady at Harvard that just resigned because of everything all of the backlash that she's received from her representation in front of, was it Congress? It's everything, how we view things, how everyone views things in the world has an impact, especially with our leaders. I don't think that the president of Harvard is an evil person, but the way that she heard the question being asked to her and understood it, and the way she tried to respond was, on one hand, to me, it was like half-assed. It's frustrating when anybody gets asked a yes or no question and they don't respond with a yes or no. They respond with a statement. That's frustrating. I understand that there's nuance to to pretty much everything. Just about everything is not as straightforward as yes or no. But for a question like, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's code of conduct? If that's not a yes, then anything less than or anything other than yes is pretty distasteful, in my opinion. And that's where we're going to end it. We're going to end it on the Harvard president resigning because she plagiarized her master's thesis or a PhD thesis or whatever, and all these accusations. And morality, we're going to get back to this next week. The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt. We're going to get into more of it, finish part 1, get through part 2, 3, and I'm pretty sure there's only 3, but there could be 4 parts. I'm going to double check. Right now, there are exactly... Dude, why is this page stuck? There are exactly 3 parts. So we'll get through 3 parts and maybe 4 or 5 episodes. Until then, you know where to go. Check out the blog, cadeandkellysblog.wordpress.com. To join this next episode live, go to the blog, and you'll find the YouTube and the Twitch. And I'm trying to get the Facebook back to work. I'm bugged, just remembering and reminding myself that the Facebook's not working. But they should be working by next week. We'll be. You can follow me there. Turn on your notifications. You can join us live and ask questions and be a part of the conversation. And other than that, tune in next time for more conversation on The Righteous Mind. We will see you at the next one. Have a great week.